Thanks very much. Thank you. Thanks to FAO for hosting this. And thanks to you all for coming. Judging from the interest, this is a topic that people are interested in, concerned about. And I think if you read the little blurb that accompanied the notice of this, you will have noticed that I also have some concerns. And it's very likely they're different to yours, so I may be able to allay your concerns, but then give you some new ones to replace them. It's particularly generous of you to come to a talk by an actuary because the usual audience for actuarial talks looks like this. So if you're still all upright by the end of this, that's a result from me. So first I need to make some disclaimers. I have some strong opinions and they're all mine. They are not FAO's. They are certainly not OCUFA's. I am no longer on the Pension and Benefits Committee. They are not the opinions that they may share my opinions, but I'm not speaking on behalf of anybody. If you ask me about pensions and about security, I will give you my opinions, but don't take this as financial advice, and certainly don't take this as that I have any kind of insight into the future for the Canadian or global economy. And I've put some numbers and figures in here, but everything's fairly simplified because there's no need to go into the legal granular detail in order to explain the main points. So if you're looking at this going, well, it's not quite that simple, then you're correct and very well informed. The motivation for this talk came from the UPP itself. So the UPP is the new university pension plan that is an amalgamation of pension plans from different universities in Ontario. It will be open to all universities to join, and they have a web page. And I went to the web page to see what the state of this plan was, and I was concerned that the information there was not as forthright as I thought it should be, considering that an awful lot of people imminently have to make a very important choice. Those people, the people making the imminent choice, are the pension plan members, all employees who are eligible to join the pension plans of the University of Toronto, Queen's University, and the University of Guelph. So these are the three universities that are the first participants, or are planned to be the first participants of this new university plan. So I thought I would tell you first, I thought I'd tell you first what the problems were, and then I'm going to justify some of the things I'm going to say now. So these are direct quotes from the UPP website, which you can find by Googling UPP Ontario. The first quote, just because the font is small, I'll read it. I know you can read, and normally I don't read slides. Joint plan governance by employers and employees will give pension plan members a greater voice in governance than in the past. Okay, that is essentially true. In this university, we have a good relationship. Pension and Benefits has good representation from employee groups and management, but other universities are not as fortunate. And the UPP is a jointly sponsored pension plan. That means it is a 50-50. There's 50-50, half and half responsibility from employees and employers. And that means there's 50-50. Like the voice in governance is also 50-50. So that's a good thing. The next thing, or one of the next things it says, is that the UPP offers more stable and predictable contributions from employers and plan members. And that is not true. It does offer more stable and predictable contributions from employers, but certainly not from plan members. And I'll explain that later. It says that there is clear and explicit sharing of risk between employers and plan members. And that is partly true. It's partly true in the sense that there is clear and explicit sharing of risk. It's 50-50. What's not clear is what is that risk. If you're going to share a risk 50-50, still on? Yeah, just not close enough. If you're going to be 50% responsible for the risk in a pension plan, it would be a good idea for you to know what that risk is. It says relief from some of the financial pressures on universities caused by Ontario's current pension funding rules. And that is false-ish. The financial pressures on universities from their pension plans don't come from Ontario's current pension funding rules. Ontario's current pension funding rules are there to try to ensure that the funds are available when they're needed. The financial pressures come from a mixture of bad luck, bad management, and bad design. Pension benefits earned under existing university pension plans will be preserved. This is true, and that should make those of you who are somewhere near retirement reasonably happy. That is, as far as I can see, that is true. Efficiencies and economies of scale will help address increasing costs. So the idea is, if we take all the money that U of T has for their pensions and all the money that Guelph and Queen's have for their pensions and put them together, somehow we're going to make more money. And it is true that if I take my savings and merge them with 3 or 4 other people's savings, then there may be economies of scale. But the University of Toronto has $5 billion of assets under management. The Queen's University has $2 billion of assets under management. If you are managing the funds of that size and you're not already paying minimum fees and having essentially every opportunity to invest, then you're doing something wrong. It's not that you're not big enough, it's that you're not doing it right. There's very little margin to be saved between managing $5 billion and managing $10 billion of assets in terms of proportion of the fund. So this is really not true. Okay, so now we need to take a quick step back to talk, because I want to talk about the risks and benefits of this proposed plan. So we need to talk about what pensions look like, and I know a lot of you will know this already, but I feel it would be valuable to run through it for those who don't. We have at University of Waterloo has a defined benefit plan. That means that the pension, the annual pension paid to someone who retires, is based on a formula. It's fixed, it's defined. It's defined in terms of the earnings near retirement. And how much that costs is variable because we rely on investment return, and it depends on how salaries grow, and it depends on whether people withdraw early, whether they live longer than we expect. All of these things vary. So the cost is uncertain, which is why university contributions vary. But the benefit is fixed relative to final salary. And this has been a very popular pension design because one of the things we want from a pension is for people as they get near to retirement to be able to plan, to be able to know what their post-retirement income will be and to plan appropriately. Defined benefit plan, every year of service adds a little bit more to the pension. So we talk about the earned pension. That's the stuff that's based on all the service you already done. But then the whole pension is based on past, your projected pension, past plus what you might do in work, the service you might have in the future in the pension plan. Defined benefit plans became popular in the 1960s and 70s. And they've been in huge decline since the mid-late 1990s. The plans that have not actually wound up, defined benefit plans, there's an awful lot of de-risking. This is not just Canada, it's not just Canada and the US, it's a worldwide phenomenon. So the USS is the University Superannuation Scheme in the UK, and they've already de-risked once, a major change in the plan design from a final salary to a career average salary plan, and right now they're in the middle of discussions as to whether that's sustainable, whether they need to close that and go to a defined contribution. Not many private sector employers have defined benefit. If you read about defined benefit, you'll see this is the gold standard for pensions, and in many ways it is. But the key issue that is not often mentioned is benefit security. if you're in Nortel or Sears, the pensioners in Nortel and Sears had good defined benefit plans, but then the money wasn't there, and so their predictable income in retirement turned out to be not so predictable. So benefit security is an issue. We're going to come back to that too. Defined contribution is kind of like a bank account. The employees put money into the account. Employer puts some money into the account. It's a proportion of salary. So the cost in relative to salary is fixed. It all gets invested. The investments earn interest. The assets earn interest. At the end, you retire. You have a great big fund of money. You can take that fund of money and convert it to an annuity, so a regular series of payments, or you can buy a Maserati, or you can gradually draw down from those assets. There's an awful lot wrong with defined contribution plans, an awful lot wrong. It relies on individuals' ability to manage money in a way that's so sophisticated that few financial advisors do it right. It relies on you not buying the Maserati, even however tempting it is. It relies on you understanding the relationship between your own longevity risk, how long you're going to live, how much interest you're going to make on that money through retirement, how much money you're going to need for long-term care, etc. And also it relies on you being a bit lucky. So I've got the next slide is a graph that I did a couple of years ago. So what is this saying? If you take a random, I actually did this on US data. If you take a random employee earning the median US income at the end of this period, which is 2012, that would be $50,000 per year. Before that, it was less. Who works 30 years with a defined contribution plan and puts the same proportion of their salary earnings into a defined contribution plan. You take that worker, identical workers, but they're retiring at different times, identical service. They're targeting, this black line is the target, they're targeting a 65% replacement rate on their salary. The one who retires in 1999 gets more pension than they had salary. Why? Because through the 1990s, investments in the stock market earned 18% per year, year after year after 10 years return at 18% per year. So that was the windfall generation. At the end here, there's someone earning $50,000, did exactly the same, did everything right, joined the plan, put the contributions in, chose the assets that these guys chose. They end up here, and they're planning, they're targeting a $30,000, $32,000 a year pension, and they're actually going to get less than 20. That's the problem with defined contribution. You might be lucky, you might be unlucky. Defined benefit is more, the idea is that if we're making extra investment return up here, we don't give it to these guys, we save it so we can give it to these people. So, defined benefit has a lot of things going for it, but it's problems. So, what is the UPP? The UPP is a defined benefit plan. It's a multi-employer plan, which means that a lot of employers join together and it's sort of separate. So the plan itself is separated from the individual employers. All the current University Ontario plans are single employer plans. That's going to matter. And as I've said, it's a jointly sponsored plan, which means it's a 50-50 collaboration. Shared risk, shared contributions, shared governance. Universities can apply to join the university pension plan. And as has already been mentioned, Waterloo has not done this and has not really seriously, as far as I know, discussed doing this. The universities that do join have to contribute sufficient assets to the university pension plan so that all the benefits that are transferred over are fully funded. So Queen's, UT, and Guelph are working through the consent process. Employees have to consent, as it says there, but they can consent. They are represented by their employee groups, so the faculty associations can consent on behalf of faculty. So individual employees do not, I think, get a vote. I think it would be negotiated through the faculty association. Is that not true? Individual employees are going to vote? All right, okay. So that's changed since the discussions a few months ago. So employees then will get a vote, but they have to consent. Retirees must be consulted, and retirees can stop it happening, but a larger proportion of retirees have to object. So what does a defined pension plan look like? Sorry.
Something about your mic. You keep going in and out. I'm not sure what that is.
Okay, thank you for telling me. Let's put it up here. All right, is that better?
So far.
So far? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you for telling me. Is that?
Is it the connection to the unit?
I don't.
You're good without it. I can hear you. No, it's very hard to hear without it.
All right, I'm going to hold it, see how that goes. All right. See, no, it's not, it is the connection. It's not the battery, because it says because it's green.
Connection?
No. All right, I'll give it one last. No, okay. I have to drop it. I'll speak up. All right, so I'm going to try speaking louder. Is this volume okay? All right. Okay, so how a defined benefit plan works? Well, we make it complicated by having these two different percentage things, but basically Waterloo plan says you get 1.4% of your average earnings near to retirement up to this YMPE, that's a government thing, currently $55,900. Everything above $55,900, if there is any, gets 2%. This number rises. There's also a maximum pensionable salary for Waterloo. That's around $190,000, $195,000 right now. So how does that compare? So here's like the key features of the Waterloo plan. I'm going to do this for Laurier as well in a minute, just to keep the Laurier people interested. So how long do we average salaries over? That's the top line. UPP 4 years, Waterloo 6 years. Sorry, 5 years. 5 years, 60 months. Accrual rate. So those are those two percentages. So Waterloo, we're 1.4% in the bottom bit, 2% in the top bit. The UPP is 1.6% in the bottom bit, 2% in the top bit. Waterloo, the calculated pension is paid as an individual pension to the employee, guaranteed for 10 years. There's no automatic spousal benefit, but you can and should give up some of your pension for a spousal benefit. In fact, you have to get your spouse to agree if you're not going to do that if you have a spouse. The UPP includes a spousal benefit of 50%, so this has generally more value than this on average. The UPP is going to allow early retirement at age 60, subject to service requirement, without any reduction of benefits. Waterloo offers early retirement without reduction at age 62. Inflation protection for a pension in payment. Both are offering 75% of CPI, or that's the inflation rate, to protect the purchasing power of a pension. But the UPP is conditional, meaning that if the assets are not sufficiently, if the assets haven't done well, so the plan hasn't done well, they will pull the CPI. That's one of the things they can do to try to protect the solvency of the plan. Member contributions for both of these plans are tiered. These are contributions for somebody earning about $100,000. For people earning below $60,000, this number would be 9.2%, and this number would be 6.25%. So the UPP is looking at a higher contribution rate. Also, this is a minimum. because the UBP is a jointly sponsored plan, if there is a deficit in the plan, if the assets don't do as well as they need to do, or the liabilities are higher than they're expected, then there need to be extra payments. Currently, in the UW plan, if there are extra payments, the university makes them. The employees don't make them. But under the UPP, joint risk, both employees and employer have to make those deficit payments. This is a minimum. Okay, last thing is, Waterloo has a payroll pension above the UT maximum, above the income tax maximum. So that means, what that means for Waterloo is that you continue earning pension. The income tax maximum allows for pension up to about $160,000 of salary, which is a pension of approximately $3,000 per year of service. UPP is only planning to offer the pension up to that maximum. Waterloo has the extra bit on top.
This is a new one if you want it. It's a different one. I don't know if you want to try it.
All right, we've got a new mic here. Let's see if... No, it doesn't work.
Doesn't work?
No.
Okay.
Can you say a bit more about the conditional indexing? Conditional on what?
So the question is, could I say more about the conditional indexing, conditional on what? So the thing about pensions is the cost of pensions depends on so many factors going out to the future. So we make an estimate of how much liability we have for all of those future payments. That's what the actuaries are paid big bucks for. And then we also look at how much asset we have. So we compare the value of the assets with the value of the liabilities. If the assets are smaller than the liabilities, then we need to do something. Under UPP, there are two things we can do. We can increase contributions for both employer and employees, and we can cut the CPI, which is going to impact pensions in payment. And how they decide which of those two things to do is not yet clear to, in the public documentation.
And if they cut it, would it come back at some point once the...
That's also not clear. I think that looks like there's an answer to that.
But is that also true with our pension plan? Because we used to 100% of CPI, we got 75.
No, so, okay, so the question is, isn't that true of our pension plan? Well, in our pension plan, we had to change the rules to go from 100% of CPI to 75%. And everything that's happened in the past, so all of the pension earned before we changed the rules, earns 100% of CPI. Everything that we get now earns 75% of CPI. At some future date, maybe that will get reduced further. I hope not. But it's guaranteed. Under UPP conditional, there will be no guaranteed CPI. That is based for people who are still earning pension. Once the pension's in payment, they will not take away back CPI. So if you got if your pension's in payment and you got a 2% rise last year for inflation, and they're cutting inflation this year, they won't take that 2% back, but they won't give you any inflation protection this year. Is that clear? Yeah.
Very quick question. You said that the UPP would retain benefits for all people going in, and often in pension plan transitions, it's if I join the plan at this point, if I already have a 100% guarantee or 75% guarantee at this point in time going forward, so the pension is actually broken into two
Yes.
pieces. Is the intention to do
Yes.
that so that in UPP there will be some funds for some people that will be at 100%, some at 75%, some at 75% conditional?
Yes. So the benefits transferred in, you have to keep track historically what part of the pension has a right to 100% CPI, what part has 75% CPI guaranteed, and what part is conditional.
Okay. So that would be for new funds from the point in time
Yeah.
that you joined that plan forward?
Like all of this it only applies for pension earned on service after joining the plan. So Laurier has a hybrid plan. It has a DB underpin plan. So basically it's got a defined contribution plan with a guaranteed minimum benefit. And the guaranteed minimum benefit is based on a defined benefit formula, just like the Waterloo plan. So it has kind of a greater than pension. If the defined you saw how the defined contribution might not do well. The defined contributions haven't been doing well, so most of the Laurier pensions are now at their minimum. So it looks a lot like a defined benefit plan because the defined contribution pensions are coming out below the minimum guarantee. It is harder if a hybrid plan, so we call this hybrid because it's a mixture of defined contribution, defined benefit. It is harder for Laurier to get out of deficit than it is for Waterloo for various reasons that I won't go into unless I really have to. So if we think about Laurier as just a defined benefit plan, then it looks like this. So pretty similar to Waterloo, except 1.37 instead of 1.4, and 50% CPI. And this again is the contribution rate, rough contribution rate for somebody earning $100,000. This I've got from the Laurier Human Resources website, so I hope it's right. All right, so why is the UPP existing? What was the pressure? The UPP website says the pressure came from the increasing cost of defined benefit plans. Why are so many defined benefit and DB underpin plans in trouble? Well, the UPP website has an answer for that too. I'm going to put that up and talk about what else. So just again for the back row, years of low interest rates, volatile investment markets lead to funding shortfalls, climbing contribution rates, together with rising life expectancy. Y'all are not dying fast enough. Resulting higher plan costs make it increasingly difficult to meet pension funding needs. That is all true. The trouble is that nothing in the UPP plan is going to change any of that. So a lot of defined benefit plans are in trouble. A lot of defined benefit plans are struggling to work out how to exist in this new world. The plans were designed in a different era. They were devised in an era when government bonds were yielding 10% per year interest. So we could afford to rely on a large amount of interest investment income because we knew that it was coming. They were also designed for a time when people spent their entire career in one job. They were devised for a time when most households were single earner households. These are relics of the 1960s and 1970s, which is why around most of the world they're being redesigned. Except in Ontario. We're staying with this pension child of the 1960s and 70s. So, okay, in the sort of why UPP. Is the UPP good for employers? Well, kind of yes. So the deficit payments, remember they were blaming the Ontario funding rules for why everything's so expensive rather than the fact that these pensions are expensive. Now, what happens if you move from what we have now, a single employer model, to this multi-employer model, is that you don't have to fund the solvency nearly as, you don't have to guarantee solvency. Why? Because the multi-employer pension plan is allowed to stop. So the University of Waterloo pension plan cannot be wound up unless it is fully funded, unless there's enough assets to pay all the liabilities. The only way the university can get out of that would be by going bankrupt, which it can't do. So we can't wind our plan up until and unless we're fully funded. We're kind of locked into that. We either have to find the money to fund it, which is quite a lot, or money to fund it from a solvency perspective, or we have to declare bankruptcy, that's it. Or we have to keep going. So the deficit payments are reduced. I've got a little graphic for that in a minute. They can take longer to pay off the deficit. So a pension plan like University of Toronto, It's owing something like $1 billion, assets minus liabilities minus assets. Under the rules as a single employer plan, the rules about paying back that $1 billion are much stricter than as a multi-employer plan. And then thirdly, the costs are shared. So right now, the contributions paid by employees are relatively level. You have to do a little bit of work when you're going to put the contributions up. You have to change the plan rules for a single employer plan. For a jointly sponsored plan, those contributions change when they need to change. When there's a deficit and the contributions need to go up, the contributions go up. So it will help short term, certainly through this low interest rate period, which may or may not last forever. It's going to help the budgets of the Ontario universities, and that's why more universities are likely to want to join. And Laurier is under a lot of pressure, and I suspect Laurier will want to join. Yeah?
So the plans that are going in now are in deficit?
Oh, yeah.
So does that mean immediately they go in and their contribution rates
So
go up?
the three plans that are going in now are all in fairly severe deficit. And if they did not go in, they would have fairly rigorous requirements to get themselves up to a solvency position. If they join UPP, they need to pay less. They don't need to get up to solvency. And they're allowed to pay over 15 years. So effectively, instead of having to find all the money at once, the new plan issues sort of a loan they can pay back in installments over 15 years. Yeah?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if you can go back to the chart that compared the UPP to Waterloo.
Back to, all right, comparing UPP to Waterloo.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm going forwards. I can't, all right, back, sorry, previous, I can do it. So, why will not I go?
Are you okay with the questions in the top?
Yeah, yeah. Okay, okay.
So I just want to make sure I'm understanding that. So so the implications of moving from the yearly plan to UPP are that it seems like the upsides are, instead of looking at 6 months, we're looking at 48, and we get a 1.6%.
Oh, yeah.
1.4.
They're very nice benefits.
Right, so that would increase it.
Yeah.
However, it seems to me that those increases would be immediately wiped out by the fact that there's no tension about the IT maximum for many people, if they're already above the maximum. Is that correct?
Yeah, but I mean, for the people earning over 160,000.
Okay, so that's the maximum.
Yeah.
And then, okay, so then basically we have to offset any additional from the 0.2%, the first 55,000, and then maybe slightly higher salary from the fact that they're looking.
So this is getting to a long question, and I want to get through. Can you save it for the end? Because I need to repeat for everybody else anyway.
Okay.
Can you?
It looks to me like it's going to be lower for most people on the UPP than the other.
So the question is it going to be lower for most people, because most people don't earn over 160,000? The UPP pension will be higher and the contributions will be higher. And the value of the benefits will be higher because of the partner pension. Okay, let's go forwards. All right, so the Ontario funding rules that they were complaining about just changed. So this is like a mythical University of Xanadu in Ontario somewhere. So this is how much, so this is our pot of money to pay pensions. This is going out to pay pensions. There's another big tap at the back that's paying the actuaries. This is how much money the University of Xanadu has. I've lost some text there. This is how much money the University of Xanadu needs. So this is their solvency. If they actually if they stay as a single employer plan, they need to try and find enough cash to get them up to there. But if they join the UPP, they only need to find enough cash to get them up to there, and they're getting that through a fairly favorable loan. Now, but the rules changed. So the rules changed to make it slightly less attractive. So here's the new rules. So the money the plan has, they've moved down how much you need to pay in for most plans as a single employer plan, and they've moved up a little bit how much you need to pay as a multi-employer plan, but still, there's still a benefit. However, if you actually wanted to guarantee these benefits, how much was it actually cost to actually be sure to pay what you've promised to pay? It's more than any of these amounts. So this amount, which is the solvency liability for Waterloo, that says how much we would need to wind this plan up, except it doesn't include any cost of paying that CPI we've guaranteed. If we add in the cost of the CPI, we're way up here. And there's a big gap. So it's not Ontario funding problem, it's really the problem of the fact that pensions are not getting the investment return that they need to get. The other part of this was that we're moving from basically employee contributions being relatively stable to employee contributions being a half of the total contribution. So all I did here is go back to 2011 with the University of Waterloo plan. And here are the contribution rates. Again, we're looking at, I think, like a $100,000 salary, or this is more or less average UW salary, which now is close to 100,000. And so we pay this person, this salary level, every other salary level is going to look like this, just shifted up or down. It went up in 2013 after a lot of consultation with the membership, and then it stayed steady ever since. The university's rate, because we have to keep trying to get solvent, we're trying to catch up with our solvency, has kept going up. If we had a joint plan, 50-50, we would have to, the employees, so essentially the difference here is largely paying off deficits that have earned in the past. If we had to pay off the deficits earned in the past as employees, then our contribution rates would have been here. A bit more variable, and certainly quite a lot higher. So you can see that the university does better. Now, maybe the university would have to pay us more to take more off our pay, in which case it wouldn't make a lot of difference. If you think that may be a realistic outcome. What about employees? So there are some good things and some not good things about the UPP. So I don't know, because I have a negative kind of world outlook, here's the not good thing. I already mentioned this, benefit security. A multi-employer pension plan can wind up. So here's the pessimistic scenario. The contributions are fixed for about 4 years after joining the plan for some time. There's another market crash. Interest rates stay low. The pension plan, the contribution rates cited for this pension plan require assets to earn around 5.6% year after year after year. And some years they earn 30%, and some years they earn minus 30%. And if that happens the other way around, then you've gone down to 70 and then you've only gone back up to whatever, 80 something. So pessimistic scenario is that contributions have jumped to, instead of being 20%, 10% employees, 10% employers, they've jumped to 40%, and UPP says, well, our employees aren't going to pay this, so we're just going to wind up. The reason they've jumped to 40% is because the assets are worth a lot less than the liabilities, and at that point they wind up and you don't get what you thought you were going to get, they just proportion everything down. So benefit security is not as great in this plan. That is a reasonably unlikely scenario. More likely is they potter through and they do fine. I don't know what the probability of this is. I have an idea. I did ask the actuaries that were being paid to work on this for this, and they could not provide it. So benefit security, I think, is a huge issue. Also, contribution volatility for the employees. We can't predict the contributions. And you should think, what is the maximum contribution rate that you'd be prepared to pay for your benefits? And let's be frank here. If you're paying more than the 10%, it's because you're not paying for your benefits. You're paying for the benefits of the people who are retiring now who didn't pay enough for their benefits. And you just got to hope that somebody's going to come along and do the same for you. I'm sure we all would. But think about this. You're being asked, if you're earning less than $56,000 today, it'll be $57,000 in 2019, below that threshold, you'll be paying 9.2% of your pay to be in this plan. That's an awful lot of money on a low salary. Would you be prepared to pay 18%? It's a real possibility that the contribution rates could double if we have another 2008 or even a mini 2008. Like 2008, for those of you who are young, financial crash, markets crash, interest rates fall. There is no proposal, again, at least in any of their public documentation, and during the time that I was involved, we can manage risk. We can do things that would protect us from having the assets fall too low. But that costs money. If we want to be sure that we're not going to pay 40% contributions, 2020, then we probably need to pay 12 or 13 now to protect ourselves from that downside. And right now, at the time that I was involved and talking to the actuaries had zero interest in any kind of adoption of modern scientific risk management methods in pension plans. We have no projections, no way of knowing what the risk is that these contributions are going to go up by a lot. We have no way of knowing what the probability is that inflation protection won't be there when we need it. And the benefits look just like the ones that got all of the DB plans in trouble, including Waterloo and Laurier, as well as the 3 early adopters. Now, there are 3 other fairly well-known Ontario plans that are similar to the UPP proposal. The Ontario Teachers Pension Plan obviously covers Ontario teachers, and the CAAT, which covers college lecturers. And here's these are exactly set up the way UPP is designed to be set up, and they're successful. It can work. OTPP has probably the best group of financial risk managers in Canada, better than the banks. They hire the best people out of our quant finance programs. That is how they manage these risks, by managing the risks, not just by hoping. But look at the costs here. These plans are not hugely different to UPP. This is what, and these 2 plans are essentially fully funded, so they're not making any deficit payments at all. OTPP thinks it costs about 11.5%, not 10%. And CAAT, for benefits that are significantly smaller, no early retirement, 1.3% lower accrual rate, think that it costs 13.3%. So if they're right, this 10.2 is not enough. It's going to have to go up. And if we wait for it to go up, then it's going to have to go up by more so we can catch up. This is my bias. What I want from a pension plan is that people on low incomes are protected. They're the people most important. Everyone, the rest of us can make other arrangements. We can afford financial advisors. We can afford low investment fees. This was an opportunity to do something modern and more fair. And there's a lot of ways that these plans, UPP and Waterloo, all these final salary defined benefit plans are offer a better return to higher paid than lower paid. Okay, but there are some good things about UPP. If everything goes well, and there's a very good chance that it will, then you're getting very generous benefits. You're taking a lot of pension negotiations and potential rancor and disagreement and conflict out of the universities. So you've got a more arm's length organization. It should allow easy transfer between universities so that if you want to move from one UPP university to another, then your pension is seamless. Whereas now, moving mid-career will severely reduce the value of your pension, even from 2 identical pension plans. And then we also have to think about the alternatives. If defined benefit plans are essentially unaffordable, as they are, which is quite likely, long-term, probably defined benefit plans will have to change. Then there will be pressure from the universities to wind up their defined benefit plans and move probably to defined contribution. And if they don't do that, given that these plans are extremely expensive, then future generations of faculty and students will be affected by the fact that a disproportionate amount of the university budget is going to be going to shoring up the pension plan. And so, better than the alternatives, it is not a hugely an overwhelming argument, but it is something to be considered. Ultimately, I doubt, looking at the rest of the world, looking at investment markets, I don't think defined benefit plans will look the same in 10 years, 15 years as they look now. And that includes UPP. But it's possible that a move to UPP is a step on the way to a more sustainable pension, defined benefit type pension design for the future. And that is all I have for today. I'm happy to take questions.
Closer to the beginning of your talk, you mentioned the three universities, Guelph, Toronto, and
Queens.
And I think you said around that point of your talk something about not everybody has to do this or not.
There's no requirement for any university to join. And even if the university wants to join, the employees have to consent.
Okay, that's the part. And being from Laurier, I'm very intrigued with your statement. Laurier is under extreme pressure to join. I just wondering if you have any insider knowledge.
No insider knowledge except that it is harder for hybrid pensions to invest their way out of deficit. And Laurier is a hybrid. Sorry. Is the UW plan in deficit? Yes. You know those three rings? It's not too much in deficit for the first ring, which is the ring that says, well, if everything goes fine and nothing goes too wrong and our investments do as well as we need them to do, then we will be fine. I think, I don't know how much, whereas Dennis is here somewhere, we're 90-something%. With the PFAD, that's the model. So with PFAD, we're about 97. Yeah, without PFAD, we've got a modest, we're about 102%. But with the PFAD, right, we're about 7% under. On a solvency basis, which is what it would cost without cost of living adjustment, about 85%, 90%. And on a wind-up, which is what it would cost including the cost of living adjustment, about 65%. Right. I think the last valuation was about 65%. That's not, I mean, we have time to get out of that, but it's not something to be complacent about. You're going to do questions.
Okay. Let's go, Carlos.
Mary, if these pensions are so expensive, how come Waterloo's contribution is so low?
Because because the university is making high contributions. And we did better, Waterloo did much better through the crisis, the financial crisis, than Toronto did. Than all of these three did. But Toronto went spectacularly wrong. It went spectacularly front page of the Globe and Mail wrong. So they just had farther to dig themselves out. Everyone is digging themselves out from the financial crisis and from the long period of low interest rates. That's killing us. Everyone else, you guys are all happy when interest rates stay low because you can, it means cheaper mortgages. The pension actuaries and the pension administrators, they're begging for those interest rates to go up.
Okay, at the far back, you're next, Mike. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mary.
Oh, sorry.
What do you recommend UW do?
I recommend UW does not go in right now. For me, the benefit security issue is a huge problem. I would want to see UPP adopting a proper, rigorous risk management strategy. I'd want to see them considering a more realistic contribution rate. And I'd be very concerned, again, for the lowest paid a group of UW employees whose contribution rates would be going up from 6 to 9%. And if you're only just making enough to live, I'm all for saving for a pension, but not at the expense of paying your rent and putting food on the table.
Far back. Can you just stand up and speak right up? We can't hear you back up here.
Okay, I was just curious who or what group thought up the University Pension Plan?
The UPP was designed as a collaborative effort between the Council of Ontario Universities and the faculty associations and all employee representative groups. So the CUPE, some staff associations.
Kate.
Thank you, Mary, for that. I was curious about your comment that there wasn't going to be a lot of greater investment opportunities for a larger plan. I think everybody has the impression, at least that teachers has a great range of investments and greater range than most teachers can possibly associate with your first comment. My second is that I'm glad you're pointing out the problem of lower paid employees. But in fact, on this campus, contract faculty sessionals have no access to
That is true.
So in fact, we're already excluding a large number of low-paid employees, which I think is quite unfair.
I agree.
And then thirdly, I guess I would just re-emphasize the risks of the single employer pension plan. I would say that the current Ford government may in fact have single employer pension plans in this cycle. He doesn't seem to be much of a fan of the
So the last comment, in case you didn't hear it, was the Ford government may have single employer pension plans in their sites. And certainly, so the UPP was an initiative of the last Ontario government because ultimately the Ontario government is essentially the underwriter. So if a university just cannot manage its pension plan, the Ontario government to some extent is looking like it would be on the hook, and they wanted to get away from that liability, not surprisingly. So a multi-employer plan would almost certainly be better protected from government interference, Ontario government interference, than a single employer plan.
At the front here.
So who would deserve the credit for getting our plan through the last financial crisis?
Oh, Dennis. I think the Pension and Benefit Committee did of the time, I was not on it at the time, did a good job of looking at kind of heuristic hedging opportunities. The people who were with me on the Pension and Benefits Committee will know that there was a lot of pressure for the last 8 years to do more of that hedging, but the thing about hedging is it's like insurance. You have to pay for it. So you're giving up some return in order to protect yourself from downside. We did that then. There was a period where we were doing less of that, and I'm no longer on the committee, so I don't know what we're doing now.
Another question. Lynn.
I actually have two for you, Mary. One is, if we join UPP, what happens to the top-up pension plan?
That's a good question. There is no top-up in the UPP. So there are various options. We could maintain that. That would be silly because the top-up runs, we pay the actuaries to do the regular plan, and then they kind of do the top-up. The marginal cost is pretty small of doing the top-up. If they had to come in just to do the top-up, that'd be a large fee for a small pension. I think the sensible thing to happen to the top-up, personal opinion, nobody else, and don't kill me, well, you can kill me, but don't kill Farah or anything, is that the top-up is spending money on people who don't need us to spend money on them, and spending, not money, risk. Because giving a defined benefit plan is risky. We don't know how long people are going to live. We don't know what interest return we're going to give. We could create a top-up pension that was defined contribution that allowed us to get the benefit of pooling, fees, contributions, without using up some of our risk budget as a university on people who earn over $160,000 a year. And if you look at the Sunshine List, I'm one of those people, and I don't think that should be a benefit I have. I'd rather that money was spent somewhere else.
And we'll go with one more question, I think, and then wrap it up. Yeah, go ahead. Yep.
So this is because my husband and I often have talks about and I get that from other people that aren't at Laurier. They say, oh, you're so lucky you've got this pension and you can, you know, whatever. Why even bother showing up for work, right? It's just going to be like living like whatever. So, and I often say, especially this climate and things that are happening and down south and everything else. And so how much does natural disasters that happen, I'm just curious with what's happening in California. We could be universities sitting right in that whole swath of destruction. When those things happen, and anything can happen in our lifetime, are pensions still protected, or these other forces affect our kind of rate of return into our... You know,
Yeah, I mean, we are affected. The more money we have, the closer we have to our assets being equal to our liabilities, the more we can lock that value in, and the more protected we are from things going wrong. If our assets are worth less than our liabilities, we essentially have to take some risks to try and get them back up. And if we're taking risks, that means we're involved in the stock markets of Canada, US, global, and we need those stock markets to not crash. Natural disasters, depending on where they happen, can create market crashes, but insurance is supposed to protect from that. It's not necessarily the case. We've had natural disaster. I mean, the California disaster is terrible, but it's not having a huge impact on stock markets. It won't have a huge impact on pensions.
even for them, I guess that's what I was thinking. If we were the university sitting right in that area...
Even for them.
Okay, interesting. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. We'll take, Mary's going to have a chance for questions after, so if you've got to leave, leave, but come on up and talk to Mary afterwards. But please give her a very big round of applause. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Thank you. Oh, lovely. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.